Hi and welcome back in our little series here about study initiation, and we're going to talk about the regulatory files. And I'll be very honest with you, this is a little dry, but it's really important that you understand some of these key points in here. So while this is not usually what's going to rock your world as a clinical research coordinator, it's not the most exciting part. It can be really, really important, and it can be really problematic if you don't manage this well. So here we go. I'm going to describe with a side-by-side kind of comparison the difference between regulatory documents and study site files. When I say regulatory documents, some people will call them study documents, but I'm going to call them regulatory documents because these are everything that's required by the FDA prior to you putting your first patient on a study. So as you set up a study and you're getting it ready to go, these are required. And so by regulation, you need to have these documents. That's why I call them regulatory documents. And they will include things, excuse me, your FDA Form 1572 that's been signed by your investigator and all of your sub-investigators, the study protocol, the consent form, your lovely IRB approval letter, financial disclosure, which we're not going to get into, and your CTA, your clinical trial agreement, which we have already established is just your contract to do the study with the sponsor. So these things you have to have in place before you can put a patient on a study, and then in order to open a study you have to have these documents. You also are going to have to maintain regulatory files on an ongoing basis. So I talked about all those initiation documents. That's sort of the foundation, and then you're going to have things that you're going to have to keep in this regulatory file system, including all of your IRB correspondence. Now remember, I said you might be able to talk to the IRB on the phone, and you'll eventually probably know people by a phone conversation, and you'll develop a phone relationship probably with your IRB folks, but everything has to be in writing. So you're going to keep everything that they've sent to you in writing. All of the items you've submitted to the IRB, every version of things. So if the IRB requires you to submit 2 different modifications to that consent form, you're going to keep both of those. Everything you submit to the IRB has to be maintained in this file. This includes safety reports, your protocol, any amended protocols that have been changed, consent forms. Everything that you've ever submitted to the IRB is going to be maintained. You're also going to maintain lab certifications and normal ranges for every laboratory that you use for this study. And there were 2 things here. The first one is the CLIA, the Clinical Laboratory Improvement Amendments. This will come from your laboratory. And then your CAP, the College of American Pathologists certification from the laboratory. These are important because all of the results that come from a laboratory that you report on your case report forms have to be verified as accurate. And these documents, the CLIA and the CAP, are the lab's assurances to everybody that the results can be trusted and what the normal ranges for the results are. So you're going to maintain those for every laboratory that you use. And the labs are really cool. They know what if you call a laboratory and you say, "Could I have a copy of your CLIA and your CAP?" They'll know what you're talking about, and they'll send them to you very easily. But every laboratory you have to have this documentation from. And then your investigator brochure, and you're going to get a new one every year from your sponsor. And so you'll be maintaining all of those. For a study that's gone on for 5 years, you'll probably have about 5 or 6 investigator brochures, excuse me. Now the study site files are a little bit different. You could call these administrative documents. And some good examples of this would be, you're going to maintain these in an ongoing manner. The regulatory documents, they start before the study is started. But these are going to sort of, your study site files, your administrative documents are going to sort of just develop in an ongoing manner. Every note to file that you write would go in this. Copies of all your case report forms that you've completed. Temperature logs. Anytime you have to keep a sample, a biological sample such as blood, urine, tissue of any type, also study drug that requires being maintained in a certain temperature range, you're going to have to keep a log that shows that those items were maintained as required by protocol. So An example would be if I had to keep tissue in a -80 freezer, I would keep a log that showed that I checked the temperature of my -80 freezer every day to verify that all my samples are being maintained at the correct temperature. Shipment logs. So if I have to send biological specimens anywhere, I'm going to keep a log of what I sent, when I sent it, and those kind of tracking information. So ongoing study site files is going to be important too. All your sponsor correspondence is going to go in this file. So all of the emails that they send you, hard copy letters that they send you, all of that is going to be maintained in your study site file. All study related internal correspondence. So if you send your investigator an email about something, that's going to be maintained. And so word to the wise is if you send your investigator an email about something related to the study, don't put any personal stuff in there because you have to maintain that correspondence. So, you know, nothing, no jokes, definitely no off-color jokes, nothing like that goes in email. Your email is going to be incredibly professional because you have to keep all of it. You're going to keep a log every time you have it that shows every time you had a monitor at your site. And this will include not only the monitor that comes to visit you, but everything that you have to monitor for assurances that you're maintaining things correctly. Temperature logs, shipping logs, drug logs, receipt logs that show you received shipments of drug from the sponsor, monitoring visits, all of that kind of stuff. Any log that you keep, you'll keep in the study site file. And then I also already mentioned the case report forms and then any corresponding source documents. We'll talk later in the semester about an audit, but these things have to be all maintained so that you could recreate, in theory, you could go back and recreate the study. And then patient recruitment and enrollment data. So you'll keep a log of every patient you've screened for the study. Now don't forget we have to maintain this according to HIPAA, so you would never put like Heather McCreary screened for the study. You might put my initial, you might give me a study number, but some way to be able to show the work that you've done trying to recruit patients, and then how many the patients that actually enrolled on the study. So some key points to all of this is that the first one is you maintain files on a very routine basis. Please, 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 for your own peace of mind and your sanity, don't let the files pile up. Do not have a desk that is full of papers that need to be filed. I say you do this on a routine basis at a minimum of once a week, more frequently if necessary, because otherwise it becomes an overwhelmingly miserable project to do. So maintain your files on a regular basis. Develop a standardized plan if you don't have one, and if there is one in place, follow the standardized plan. So your study files should be organized the same across all studies. This will help you down the road when someone says, can you show me that IRB approval letter? You'll know exactly where to find it in your study files. So when I say have a study file and a regulatory document and a study site file, I don't mean just have them in a folder, but have them systematically organized. Key point to remember is that audit reports and HR records are never maintained in the study files. You have a regulatory documents, you will have study files, and then as a part of doing business and just a regular management system, you'll have records of HR information in your audits. You keep those separate because those are not really necessarily shown to auditors when they come to your site. And we'll get into more of that later in the semester. But your regulatory documents you keep, study site files you keep, and then the HR records and the audits are a result of doing business and they're kept separate. I want you to be organized. If you're not organized, really consider being organized. And if you're already organized, maintain being organized. I cannot overemphasize how important it is to have a system and to follow it. And this will make your life a lot easier as a research coordinator. Trust me, I've seen people do it both ways. And the people who are organized are by far and away much happier and more productive. So, of course, Karen Wood, our wonderful reference, If you have any questions, I would love to answer them, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.